Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel. I'm the managing editor and executive director of CavanKerry Press, a nonprofit poetry and memoir publishing organization that believes in bringing the words of fine writers to people wherever they live, work, receive services, especially in advancement of folks who are underserved, people in need. We bring free programming wherever we can find to bring that. Anyway, it is a pleasure to share two truly delightful writers with you this afternoon. We've got Theta Pavis and our own Cat Doty, who has two books with us. I'll introduce in sort of reader order, and then we'll have a Q&A after the reading is complete. Thank you very much for taking the time this Saturday afternoon to enjoy some poetry, and we hope you do. As I mentioned a little before, there's an open mic to sign up if you want, and with that, here's the bios. Theta Pavis is a poet, editor, and educator living in Jersey City, New Jersey. Her first chapbook, The Red Strobe, which I should have brought up a copy of and made a wave around, but I'm sure you'll see it in just a second, just came out in March, right? Is that what I heard you saying?
Yes.
March, so that is awesome. Her writing has appeared in the Journal of New Jersey Poets, The Red Wheelbarrow, Mom Egg Review, Spill Words Press, Why to These Rocks, 50 Years of Poetry from the Community of Writers by Heyday Books, and many, many others. A collection of her poems was shortlisted in 2022 by Yellow Arrow Publishing. Her poems have also been performed on stage by Poetry Well in New York. She's received residencies from Arts by the People and the Bethany Arts Center in New York. The Community of Writers Workshop in California recently awarded her a scholarship. Theta graduated from UCLA and has a master's from Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism. After Theta is finished, you will, as I mentioned earlier, hear our very own Cat Doty, who we have been so fortunate to publish two of her life-affirming, careful, compassionate, hilarious collections of poetry. Cat Doty is a poet and an educator from Paterson, New Jersey. She's the author of Momentum and Wonderama, as well as is it Just Kidding? Yeah, which is a really delightful illustrated book that Kat made with just the most charming illustrations you could possibly think of as well. She has received prizes and fellowships from the National Endowment of the Arts, the New York Foundation for the Arts, the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, and the Academy of American Poets. An MFA graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop, she has taught for the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, the Frost Place, and the New York Public Library, among others. Her poems have appeared widely in journals and anthologies, and perhaps most importantly of all, not perhaps, just most importantly of all, she is just a magnanimous, wonderful person who has always been supportive and kind to her community of writers, to the press, everything else. So it's my pleasure, and that is also, I'm only getting to know Theta recently. I'm so delighted that you two are reading together, because to me you have a very similar, you have a kinship in energy, and I'm so grateful to be able to introduce you both. So without further ado, Theta, come on up.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody who came, and I just want to say Catherine Doty is really wonderful and kind, because when this was coming out, a lot of people spend a lot of time obsessing about the blurbs on the back, which are very important, and Cat Doty was so kind enough to read the manuscript and give me a blurb, which meant everything to me. And CavanKerry Press is a really wonderful press. Some people heard I was at an event last night in New York City for another one of their authors that was wonderful. And things are so rough in the United States right now. I find myself getting very numb. I'm either like focusing on what's happening or shutting it out. And it's being in community like this and last night, and a press like this that is giving writers a chance to see their words come out and affect people. It just means a lot to me. This book is a lot about growing up in Jersey City in this wild family where my mom had 4 kids from 3 different men. And we don't refer to each other as halves and steps and all of that stuff. So I'm just going to jump in, and my friend Barbara said she'd wave at me when I've got 5 minutes left. So this is called Evidence, about shopping with my mother. Evidence. When the store detective caught me in aisle 6, I was up to my elbow in Fruit Loops, desperately fishing for the plastic toy of the month. He sidled up to me, a smirk on his greasy face. I froze, fingers just skimming the plastic wrapper, buried beneath the sweet loops, small wreaths of red, orange, yellow. One aisle over, we found my mother, the triumphant detective, and me, shamefaced pillager of cereal boxes. The offered evidence, the defiled box, with Toucan Sam's beak open in amazement, was held above me. My small, brown-haired head and pale face turned down to stare at the ShopRite floor. Then my mother took the box, like, this is what we ate every single day for breakfast, and tossed it into our cart, like the store cop could drop dead. And though he followed us all the way to checkout, she never flinched. My mom grew up in, she was born in San Francisco, and they kind of moved all over the place. Upstate New York, outside of Paris. One thing that stayed with her whole life was her love of the beach. I think half the conversations we have in our family are about when are we going to the beach. This is called The Beach Chronicles. She would stretch herself out on the sand like she owned the world. And the world loved her, and we loved it. Nothing ever went wrong at the ocean. I don't remember sunburns. She was free there, even with 4 children in tow. The water bottles were frozen, our cooler was packed. Her fried chicken and potato salad, covered in paprika dust, filled the old dented metal bowl. There was fresh fruit for later, peach juice dripping down our chins, and one icy green glass Heineken at the end of the day for her. The sun going down, the sand castles built, empires of the day drawn out to sea and fallen, our books and bodies coated in sand, our towels forever damp, the ocean quiet and warm. She'd pack us up for the drive home, and when they all fell asleep in the back seat, it would be just me and her, as it had been at the beginning. I'd peel back the black plastic lid of her black coffee and hand it to her. I'd love her despite everything, and a great satisfaction would settle over us. We drove back there after she died, a box of ash closed on my lap, my hand over the lid. a child's yellow bucket at the ready. I waded in and set her free. So she worked for almost 14 years at an oil refinery in New Jersey, right off the turnpike, and you can see it, and I often do when I'm coming home, the Bayway refinery. When Exxon decided to sell it, she was one of the first people let go because she'd been such a troublemaker in the union, as one would expect. This is called Driving Past the Bayway Refinery. Slender spires of flange and fire, flashing lights and broil of fume. Linden is a pungent dreamscape on the side of the turnpike. Linden is the town that it's in. A sprawling sci-fi city, a whispering, unknowable hiss of chemicals, invisible benzene, floating vapors heavier than air. Figures in chalk-white overalls move slowly around the snake world of pipes. The workers climb past fat, round vats, holding tanks so large there are spiral staircases bolted and curling around the sides for them to scale in their steel-toed boots. The whole place is a machine making fuel for other machines run by humans crawling over massive drums. In the air, a sky full of gritty plumes, a reeking system, a wondrous menace of nitrous oxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, leaving behind effluvia and cancer, the price per gallon, the chemical pink of a New Jersey sunset. Mm-hmm. I've been finding it hard to write a lot lately, partially because of everything that's happening, but then also I've been trying to revise a lot of stuff that I was writing when this was being put together. You know, you get something together and you're working on that, and then you've got all these things from workshops that you've gone to or whatever, ideas that come into your head. So I've really been trying to like slap my own hand and like, don't sign up for another workshop, just edit. But one short thing I wrote was, I've been going to a lot of anti-war demonstrations, and you know, it's funny because I think the personal is political, which is a phrase that was coined by a family friend. But I don't have that many political poems, and this is very short. This was a pro-Palestinian demonstration that I went to in the city, and when I go to these things, I often run into friends of my mom, which is really wonderful, and we march together sometimes. And this one was around the holidays. It's called Carry Them. Yesterday, more than 1,000 of us marched silent through Midtown, past holiday windows. We carried small shrouds. For blocks, I held a wrapped baby, mourning the families of Gaza until I had to give her up. There were so many of us on the streets, we had to share the dead. Mm-hmm. This is an old poem that is not in the book that I reworked a little bit, and I think that we could, you know, I like to mix it up. And this book is pretty dark, so this is called A Single Song, and it is about being on dating apps, which I don't recommend. This is called A Single Song. I matched with a man online who told me he was hoping to meet with someone with no cats and no kids. I told him I was hoping to meet someone who wasn't an asshole. I matched with a man who ran a niche podcast about an old white boy band, but he had a nice smile. By the time I suggested a drink, he had already met someone else. She probably has really nice headphones. I matched, whoop, I lost my place. I matched with a man who lived 6 hours away and spoke 3 languages. I spent a lot of money on tolls. But while he and the weather were nice, the trees had not yet begun to turn, and romance didn't come riding in on the early autumn wind. I matched with men who were sober and guys who posed with huge, glistening glasses of beer. Men who had their shirts off and some with elaborate mustaches. I matched with a guy in Brooklyn incapable of holding a conversation who promised a picnic and served me seltzer. I matched with a man who was looking for matches while he was at the bar with me, and one who used a photo so old he was unrecognizable. I went out with a doctor who didn't know what was wrong with his own heart. I matched and swiped and regaled my still married friends with tales of ghosting. I considered taking up knitting and instead bought more books and always had time to floss. I looked at photos of expensive velvet sofas when the swiping became too much, but I did not redecorate myself or any of my rooms. I did my laundry and matched my socks. How am I doing on time? All right, good. Okay, go back to this book. So I grew up in mostly in Jersey City, and it's weird to live there because, you know, the city is being gentrified so quickly. And one of my old schools was turned into a condo, one of my grammar schools, but another one that I graduated from 8th grade is still a school. And this is what happened when the state told the schools that girls had to be able to take wood shop. Was not very popular because we only took home ec. The forced integration of woodshop. Mr. Halstead's gold chain bracelet glowed in the amber dim of his basement workshop. In the cozy gloaming, his man hands and hairy wrist and glinting gold, his lair of sawdust and leather invaded by us, the girls. We sat silent on narrow benches while he told us he didn't agree and would rather see us upstairs in home ec making mini pizzas and sewing. But he would teach us anyway because they were making him. Everyone was rapt and the boys, smug, sat up straighter. But how I loved the table saw, the beveling, and the lathe, and the small flock of wooden geese we made, staining them in darker and darker hues, then shellacking them, then watching them sail shiny across my father's wall. Each year, Halstead led his students through the same routine, a decorative cutting board for Mom, the geese for Dad. You stood to grip the saws and marvel at the various teeth. You stood to push the wood through the unforgiving bite. I'll just read one more. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for this opportunity. So happy to share this afternoon with Kat Doty. This is called A Kindness, taking care of my mom. A kindness, hard, crusted morning. February's a hangover of sleet. I stomp forward, punch my feet through the frozen snow swept against my car. It's almost up to my knees. All I have to do is unlock the frozen door, coax the old motor to turn over, try to feel the weak sun glistening off the ice. Then go back inside and get my mother. Go back and get my wry and vanishing mother and help her over the slick drifts and into a warm car. Push through the Lincoln Tunnel before barreling up the West Side Highway and the cross-town grid, just to walk her into that hospital again for radiation. The coffee is made, paperwork packed, that's all I have to do. Pry open the car's frozen door, scrape the windshield clean, turn the ignition. But the keys slip from my gloved hands into the blanched furrows surrounding the car. They disappear, quicksilver, quietly slipping into the white. The keys gone. And now all I have to do is find them with my hands dredging the snow, digging up to my elbows, and nothing. The keys are lost in the white, and I could almost, at that moment, be the Arctic explorer lost in a vast blank, the sled dogs long gone. The street is silent. Each breath I gasp in comes out visible and impotent. I'm numb and not from cold, stuporous. Then the neighbor who always walks his happy dog down our block comes along and sees me frozen there. Flaky crystals melting over the rim of my boots, and he stops to ask, what is wrong? And I don't say cancer is killing her and I want to die. And I don't say divorce moved into my house. And I don't say I secretly have a pack of cigarettes in my pocket. And I don't say, how can it still be winter? I say, I've dropped my keys in the snow, and he stops with his black dog, plunges his arms into the white piles, and finds them. And I've never been more grateful in my life. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, and thank you to Brandy and the library, and to my Gabe. My book, this, I look at Gabe and I see this book, and when I hold this book I think of Gabe, because it's a treasure to me. I'm not talking about the quality of what's in it, but the way it was made and the love that went into making it. And I have never had a fact checked so lusciously, extravagantly. I mean, I could have had Easy Bake Oven misspelled. There were a number of things I could have done that were real, like rube of moves, but Gabe is the best, and I love him to death, and he knows that.
Mutual.
I think I'm going to read two, I'm going to start with two new ones, and then one from my first book, and then a couple from the new one. This is called Fundamental. When Jehovah's Witnesses braved our busted door, our mother, impressed with their guts and their elegant shirtwaists, waved them into the kitchen where she had been lonely. The two women stood a little behind the man, who held in his brown hands a book that looked chock full of prayers. And our mother, lonely, yes, but easily bored, lifted her eyes like a pin-curled prophet to the ring of fluorescent light that served as her halo, and asked them, as if God himself were egging her on, would they like some coffee, but instant and with canned milk? And that's when they noticed us, home from school with the mumps, squatting on the floor, an indigenous people, not of New Jersey, but of this very house. The man with the book took one look at our snotty faces and spoke at last, a prayer of healing and goodness, as the woman in the blue stripes reached in her purse and offered our mother a pack of gum, grape, the best, and 3 pieces of saltwater taffy, the long, not the round kind. When they left, which was then, we jubilated, chewing, though the sour gum set our swollen glands on fire, and we had to dance in a frenzy to not spit it out. And this is, I write a lot about Catholic school and girls in, like little, not that kind of trouble, just general trouble. And it's called Like the Wind. At 10, I was peripatetic and in flames, and never walked if I could flat out gallop, even to school, covering 7 blazing blocks with a book bag swinging in first one hand, then the other. A bit of ballast stuffed with unsigned papers, with stolen comic books and knotted rosaries. Ursa Major held his spot above me, invisible in the yellow morning sky, and the spank of my saddle shoes on the bluestone and concrete, and me bursting past in a blur of gray plaid and sharp elbows, made people scream and leap up on their porches, but I was on fire inside and so pleased to be mammal. I traveled like panic. I took the weather with me. You're very, whenever, I have a poem in here that nobody claps after. Sometimes I just wonder, because it's so funny. I was very kind to people to clap, but if you heard it, you would know why, so I'll read it. Stop talking about it. Let's get something else. And this is called Momentum. And this is me cleaned up when I was 40. Okay. Momentum. Your friends won't try to talk you out of the barrel, or your brag to go first, which has nothing to do with bravery. And you're so hungry to earn their love, you forget to claim first your perhaps last look at this mountain. Crab apples hanging sour in the sun, abandoned Buick, a favorite place to play, dismantled and weathered and delicate as a voting booth. Instead, you dive straight away and headfirst into darkness, the steel drum that dusts you like a chicken part with rust. Looking out, there's nothing to see of your friends but their calves, which are scabby, and below them the filthy sneakers shifting every foot, aching to kick you off this cliff. Their faces, you know, are blank with anticipation, the look you see when they watch TV eating popcorn. They're already talking about you as if you're gone, as if you boarded a bus and roared out of earshot when one foot flashes forward and launches you. You know as you feel that first solid slam, you are lost. The barrel changes shape with each crash to earth, as you will later, assuming and losing lives, but this is so true now. Ankles flayed to the bone, cracked ribs and crushed mint, the brittle, pissy sumac. Right now, the pin oaks are popping in their sockets. The hillside wears your shoes, clouds, pleat, and buck. You know, of course, that no one's going second, and friends who tell this story will use the word idiot, rolling their hands in the air. But you know what your life is for now, and rise up and just about scalp yourself on that tree limb above you. Another thing you couldn't possibly know was coming. Another which, like your first breath, was not your idea. I'm going to read you the poem. Nobody clapped after. And I mean, believe me, we love the claps. All right, here we go. Shaman. Where is it? Sorry. This. I'm so sorry. It's terrible when people do this. Where is it?
Take your time.
Oh, you're very kind. There it is. All right. Thank you for your patience. Shaman. My father comes home in a bad way and takes out the porch. The house shakes. We wake up and all the neighbors wake too. They gather outside in sleepy 2s and 3s. A few hold a pet or baby or a drink. One starts to shout, the others shut her up. Under the streetlight, they watch him shed his clothes. The shirt he hangs on a railroad spike stuck in a tree. The pants he folds along where a crease would be, then rolls up and drops in the gravel and chicory. He stumbles over the shoes he kicked off first. The motor still runs, and the smashed lights still hold their small flames. Howls all around as the baggy gray shorts are let go. Then the hat, smashed flat because cats like to sleep on hats, is hung on the mailbox. He slaps at himself where he thinks his pockets are, but no keys. Some asshole starts to clap. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking that way, but it's been lots of fun to have around. This is my grandma poem. Sadly, it is called Only Grandma. Mischief made her lift her arms and turn with such a look of wonder on her face that I was not afraid to see the flames licking along both sleeves of her flannel robe, but stepped back as one does from an act of God, the better to take in her glittering pale green eyes, her pirate's nose, the few yellow teeth in her little open mouth, as my mother, her own mouth opened in a scream, rushed up behind her to yank off the blazing robe and dance on its burning. And Grandma, naked, jubilant, winked at me as the kettle shrieked its way to boiling dry, and sent me from some far hilltop in her far world a vision of what it was certain I'd become, wild-eyed and crazy, and blazing like a six-gun. Nothing at all to be met with shame or fear. So this is for her, who now has long been ash, a chronicle, the last word of which is, oh.
That's good.
Thank you. This is called New Girl in Town. I have a bunch about poor Franny, who moved to Patterson and moved into the house I lived in, and had not had a terrific education. She moved around a lot, and I was supposed to kind of get her up to speed on her reading and tell her what to do in town, what to avoid and what to seek. So this is called New Girl in Town. Cross the street, Franny, if ever you spy Joe Moe, whose hand-hewn tar paper shack we approach on bets, or pitch chunks of pudding stone at from moving cars. You'll want, too, to skirt Donna's uncles, drunk and jolly, who'll sneak through your screen door with snow cones and try to kiss you. And Ronnie V, who just got out of Rahway. We're not supposed to know what got him there. And St. Ag's School is an iron maiden of dangers. Those statues of saints peer out of each dusky corner, and Jesus, his plaster self, tops the entrance stairs, where one day he stared at a second grader's vomit, hand held before his exposed and flaming heart, as if to express distaste for incarnation. Expect more shame to be handed out than blessings, administered lavishly both in word and deed. For girls, 18 inches of steel on open palms. For boys, once slung across a nun's black lap, lusty wax on the seats of their regulation pants. So that's about it, Fran. Except for that candy store where the old guy gives out wax lips for Halloween and ends of cold cuts to the dogs he lets inside. He'll say, "Sweetheart, you look pale. Are you on the rag?" If you're hungry, Franny, tell him yes. He'll put his hand on your stomach and then on your forehead, then tell you you're clammy, then toast you a piece of toast. Very kind. This is, I'll read these two more. Condemned, one is called Condemned, and this is the one. And this is in 3 sections, which is always a goofy thing. You don't want to stand there in one. You know, my friend used to do, I will make a rude noise between the sections of the poem. I don't intend to. If I do, I expect your forgiveness. This is Condemned, Part 1. Franny and I leave school with Debbie Nank, who's heard about Franny's house and wants to see it, and maybe step inside if she has the nerve. But because it's Friday, and Friday means Kraft macaroni, Franny runs the steep last block alone. Debbie freezes when we reach Franny's slumping porch, the house with its caving roof and glassless windows. She confides in me that if that's where she had to live, she'd race to the footbridge and hurl herself into the falls. Then she asks me where I live, which is downstairs from Franny. Before waddling off to snooze in the dark all day, our mother's possum peeks out from his hole in the wall, one seeded each evening with berries and cold spaghetti, and night crawlers pried from the ground with a carving fork. In volume O of a neighbor's Funk and Wagnalls and Dawn's primal light, with coffee and some despair, she learns that the only marsupial in our country, not to mention the first one to ever live in her kitchen, belongs to the least evolved of all the species. Like her, for millions of years, he hasn't changed. But for For now, she takes solace in her possum's opposable thumbs, the phalanx of fangs he bears in a pink-tongued yawn. Soon her children will waken and plague her with their needs. 3. While Peggy draws John Lennon on the wall, I print in magic marker on the ceiling a poem I love about poppies and the dead. Mary cracks black walnuts with a rock and feeds the pieces to our sister Judy, who pries the rusted lid from a can of house paint so she and Tommy can camouflage their beds. In the kitchen, our happy mother plays Nelson Eddy so loud that it drowns out the screams of the couple upstairs. She is the reason, she tells us, why we are so smart. And smarts you can't buy, or we'd sell ours and get a TV. This is JC and me in the summer of '64. You know, that JC, and this me. Catholicism and puberty duked it out. The summer my body broke out of its corral and galloped Patterson streets in search of sugar through the new and luscious grasses of impure thought. The priest I confessed to dismissed me as overly scrupulous. I was thinking too much about thinking of dirty things. And distracted because the word scrupulous started with screw, I left with a head full of sin and 2 holy cards, which he passed me as if they were discards in holy strip poker, a game I imagined instructive and entertaining. The first was St. Agatha, Sicily's virgin martyr. Her eyes rolled up to God, as often mine were. She would not renounce him, despite the terrible tortures he could, being God, have simply plucked her from. If it were me, I'd have just said, Jesus who? Then cantered right out of there with my virgin self and ducked behind the bleachers at Hinchcliffe Stadium. The second holy card was Jesus himself, bathed in a golden light and softly smiling, halo tipped back and eyes beaming mercy and mirth. I hadn't noticed till then how handsome he was. Eyes like blue poppies, a nose I regarded with envy, wavy auburn hair with a center part. I pictured the halls of St. Ag's full of boys in caftans, and me with my black hair tossing in the hot pink short shorts that got me suspended from school. Imagine, I thought, when he too was confused and changing, not quite a man yet, and almost, but not quite, God. Hear me calling his name, though he's already heading toward me, the August wind blowing his robe between his legs, the power to miracle lighting his holy face, a gingery fuzz on his lip, and an eager smile telling me I have powers too. At my nearness, his thoughts will cleave the Patterson Falls, send beer cans and tires jouncing down McBride, and cause the all-the-way hot dogs at Libby's lunch to vault like angels from their very secret sauce. Thank you.
And now I'll ask you to return to the
All right.
return to the stage, as it were, both of you, and we'll have a little Q&A for anyone who might have questions. And if you have questions for each other, you know, conversation is also great. I'm sure you have lots to say.
I have to say that's a first. I like we're invited to speak to each other.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah. I just love the humor in your work, scrupulous and screw. I just love that so much. I really admire that.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know I loved your book because I wrote stuff on the back of it.
Yeah. It's not every day you hear 2 women read together who both have poems that use the word asshole.
That's true.
I loved both of your poems, and I'll take I'll just start with you first. I love the one about your grandmother. Oh my God, that's so powerful. The image of her naked standing there with, with the power that this older woman had, and the generations, and the metaphor of the fire, it's just so powerful. I loved it. I just loved it. And your poem with your mother lying on the beach, I love that. And I identify with that because I was a single parent. By the time I was 35, I was widowed and divorced. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm probably the same age as both of your mothers because I'm 78, so I kind of identify with these poems. But seriously, you had different styles, but each one was very dynamic. And both of your poems kind of reminded me of, I work here at the library. Once a month I do poetry readings. Mm. And last month I did a poem. I did a lot of women's poems. I did Lucille Clifton. Mm-hmm. I did Doreen Lux. And one of the poems by Doreen Lux was Fast Gas. And both of your poems kind of reminded me of that. And then, I can't remember the other poet I read. But I just did a whole thing on women and their bodies and becoming themselves. And had I read your poems, I would have said, these are two poets who are out there today writing, and I would have put it into my hour. This was very good. Thank you.
Thanks for your kindness. Thank you.
That poem about your grandmother, I love the whole thing, but then at the end when she winks, again, it's, your attention to detail, but there's the craziness of life, the humor in the midst of wild things happening, that kind of like, I got you, that she took a second to wink at you. I just love that.
Oh, I'm glad. And we both have had rollicking households, didn't we? Children here and there, and yes, yeah. I feel it in your work. Yeah. I know.
And that's more common than you realize. It's more common than you realize. We're used to 19th century poetry, but this is the poetry out there today. This is what you're living through. It speaks to us.
Yeah, and I mean, you both are such natural storytellers that I'm sitting here and wondering if it might be informative to hear you talk about, what it is about the structure of poetry that draws you to tell your stories in that form. Because, I am not a great storyteller, like naturally. It takes a while for me to get there. I can figure it out if I have time and a piece of paper, but one thing I've learned is not every story is interesting, but you both have the ability to capture these real, as you said, dynamic sparks of interesting, even out of the mundane everyday, and you elevate it into something. This moment that you've encapsulated in your writing. And I'm wondering, A, what drives you to write it in the form of poetry, and B, does poetry then help make it that sort of, that entity, that one unified piece?
What do you think? I think the poetry came to me first because my parents spoke prose, and most of the people around me spoke prose. And then, my mother would pick up the great book of British and American authors, and she would open this tome, and she had plenty of kids. But if you were quiet, you could crawl into her lap and say, read out loud, and she would. And I think I just always associated that her breathing and then the poem, and it was like everything good that could be in one place, except for food. But it was a real good place. And I wanted simply to do what was being done to me at that time. I wanted to take somebody out of wherever they thought they were and put them somewhere else. And and tell a story. And I didn't probably have patience or the words for prose yet, but I would, even like my grandmother, aphasia is a kind of a constant metaphor. She spoke, and if she did not know the word for wedding, she would say white dress. Like, you could always follow this leaping metaphor language. And I like that poetry, it leaps, it moves. We don't know what to expect of it.
Yeah, I that's really interesting because my parents both read to me, and they split up when I was really young, but they both read to me. And my dad would read to me for hours in, this deep voice. And my mother was a poet, so there was a lot of poetry in the house. And sometimes she would recite stuff that her father had made them memorize. Nobody made me memorize a poem until I got to high school. I mean, my mother encouraged it, but there was, the rhythm that attracted me. But yes, I think storytelling, So what happened with me, I started writing poems when I was very young. It just came. And we would go to family functions, and I had these cousins who went to fancy schools, and they took piano lessons, and it was very New York. And so at the end of the family function, the children would be invited to play the piano, and I'd be very jealous, and then I would get stood up in front, read your poem about Mother Nature, she'd make me recite it to people. So it was like early on, like, oh, well, I can write, there's no piano in the house, but I went on to become a journalist, and Barbara met me at my second newspaper job, and that was storytelling too, but the poetry was always there. It just took me a long time to let myself, really do that.
Did you discover the journalism, vein first, and then poetry? Or
So poetry was there first,
and then
I finished college, and I was trying to figure out what to do next, and I was taking this incredible poetry class in LA, and there's still some writers from that I'm in touch with a little bit. It was run by this wonderful African-American woman in LA, and I was waiting to hear about grad school. I was like, I don't know, law school, a PhD in women's history, journalism, and I was waiting to hear. And I was like, if I don't get into journalism school, I'm going to become a performance poet. I don't think I really knew what a performance poet was, but I got into journalism school. Because I thought I need to have like a proper career, and also I wanted to tell people's stories, right? So it took me a long time to come back to be like, it's okay, I can tell my stories, because I was always writing, but I wasn't putting it out in the world.
I never think that's a bad idea. I think that if you're writing, then you're getting better at what you're doing. So if you do that for 5 years, you're better than you were 5 years ago. It's just like the rush into print. I know you never felt it. Certainly, we were of a different generation. You wrote until it was good, but not so much like I wrote this on the back of an envelope on the way here. Where can I publish it, kind of thing. Yeah.
I always felt that poetry comes out of emotion, and then you find the form of the words. But of course, the more gifted you are with language, then you're not writing a Hallmark card, you're writing a decent poem. But there's some quote by Donald Hall that's running through my head, but I can't think of it now. But this is what he says, that poetry allows us to find our emotional level and share that with other people, and that's the common ground. And the difference between a poem and a short story in journalism is a poet would say, a short story would say, today was a rainy day, but a poem would say, the rain pulled it out of me, whatever. But, like, you're playing with words in a different way, but the emotion is always there. Whereas in a short story or a journalism or a play or a book, some novel, the emotion is deeper, but the poem is always there out on the page. emotions there.
It's interesting. I don't know what your experience was like. I feel like I was pushing away from it for a long time.
Away from the motion?
No, no one who knows me would say that. No, from poetry.
Okay.
You know, I wrote short stories when I was younger. You know, journalism, investigative reporting, overseas investigative independent journalist. You know, and then it would be like, oh, memoir is great. This is great. You know, but I think the thing that flows most of the time easiest for me is poetry. And yeah, and I'm very happy when I'm around, you know, poets talking about poetry or in a workshop or, yeah. Yeah.
Because people are talking about their feelings.
Yeah, and sometimes I kind of, if I've got a bunch of students or, you know, we're getting into the feelings and I'll always pull back just a little bit and say, okay, we're going to just like let it out. Just no. Throw off your shoulder. Just do what you want to do. So, but then we're going to come back in a lab coat and we're going to look at this pile. We're going to see, and we're going to start to see what poetry. It's kind of propaganda. You're not telling that story hoping that people just nod and say, "Well, that was a story." You know, you want to get in them and have it's. You want something universal to happen. You want them to say, oh, you know, oh yes, I had that, you know, I had that feeling, or I was, you know, that relationship sounds familiar to me, or I was afraid of the same thing. So I'm looking for, you know, for that universal thing, but it's got to be so specific to get there. No?
But it's not just the emotion, it's the attention that's paid to language, like screwed and, what was the word?
Scrupulous.
Scrupulous, right? You know, like I'm going to drive home just thinking about that. and a lot of, I'm going to be thinking about the stories, but I'm going to be thinking about the words that she chose and the order that she put them in. And so, I mean, I read a lot of fiction. I love memoir. I can't get enough of it. I read journalism. But that attention that you get to, the time you get to spend with language when you read poetry. My favorite works are the ones that are, you know, punching me in the face with emotion. But it's also the language. I just like to sit in the language. And it's not that other writers don't do that, but there's something, it's got a spotlight on it.
Well, the poetry definitely does, yeah.
It's got a spotlight on it.
Yeah. It's what you manipulate with, you know, the shades of meaning and picking your, I just love it. It's like, you know, shopping, you know, like, take that word. Oh,
Yeah.
this one's fresher.
Yeah.
Oh, that one works.
Yeah.
These
So are
three
you
go
inspired by other poets?
Pardon?
You must, I would say you're inspired by other poets. Which are your favorite poets? Do one at a time.
Oh,
Well, I've been spending a lot of time with Nadia Alexis's new book, Beyond the Watershed, which is just, I just really, really am loving it so much. And I really like Marie Howe, Sharon Olds. There's a new poet that I'll look up the name, a trans poet who read in Jersey City this week, who was incredible, beautiful language, you know? So, yeah, those are some of my big, I was very influenced by my mom. Yusuf Komiyaka and Cornelius Eady are also favorites of mine. So, you know, she was just constantly bringing in modern poetry, so older stuff, but modern poetry. And sometimes she would mail me books. Like, she mailed me a book when I was in college of Toy Derricott, one of her earliest books, and the book was called Natural Childbirth. So I'm in college, and Mom is sending me a book, and I'm just like, ew, you know, and I just read the whole thing recently. Because when she sent it to me in college, I'm sure I glanced at it, and I was just, you know, and I open it, and it's like, Mom has written to me inside of it, Toy Derricott has signed it, and written to me inside of it, but I never sat with that book. I wasn't thinking about
I
that.
have trouble hearing Derek Walcott.
No,
No,
Troy Derricott.
Oh,
Yeah, the woman. Right?
yeah, because I thought
Yeah.
you said Derek Walcott.
Yeah, no, I read him too, but yeah, so
Because he's one of my favorites. Okay.
yeah, so she was always, you
How
know,
nice.
yeah, so very special.
So we both had poets or poetry lovers in our house.
Yeah.
Growing up on that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
We're pretty normal.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Most of the time. Most of the time.
Who were your favorites growing up?
Oh,
That Emily
growing up, I
Dickinson
had
Frost.
a big book of British American.
Yeah.
I loved Yeats. I read Yeats all day. I found Isabella Gardner, who probably wrote, I think, in the 50s, but obviously she loved Yeats. I just did this whole thing. I just loved him. And then just sort of read poetry like you'd listen to your transistor radio.
Mm-hmm.
Like a poem would come on and they'd say, that's, Theodore Roethke.
Mm.
See,
Yeah.
it's more of
Yeah,
those,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And I still have poems. There may be a poet that I don't, especially that I'm not jealous of. I mean, I admire. I love to pick like Diane Seuss. Oh,
Yeah.
I was lost.
Yeah,
She wrote it all, and I can't now.
Yeah.
As if I could have. But she's phenomenal. But usually it'll be like, you hear one song on the radio and you just love that song, but you're not going to go out and buy a Creedence Clearwater Revival album yet. So I have the individual poems I love very much. But I love Sharon Olds. And I love Dorian Roth.
Yeah.
There's so many
Yeah.
that, writing now and
yeah.
long ago that I love. Too many.
I love that you made the connection that both of you had poetic family members, because I am perhaps obnoxiously fond of this quote from Don Quixote, which is to turn poet is an incurable and infectious malady. It's one of my favorite lines. So with all that said, anyone else, do you have any other questions for Kat or Theta?
How do you two know each other?
Well, we've seen each other at events,
Yeah.
a little bit, but Dimitri Reyes, who is a poet I really admire, who works at the press, I think I'd already had your book. I already bought your book at the Patterson Poetry Festival, I think. And Dimitri mentioned that I could reach out to you about the blurb for the book, and so then we've emailed a little bit, and so that's how. And then we see each other at things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we're in co-biz together.
Yeah.
Glad we're able to bridge those connections,
Yeah.
because like I said at the top, and I think your writing and your easy conversation proved me right, not that I have to be, but you do very much have that, kinship of spirit and approach to how you write and all of that, and I really admire it.
I hope we see each other more often.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to ask for a round of applause. And then if each of you might want to read one extra poem, I can grab your books and bring them up to you.
Sure.
Yeah, in lieu of an open mic if no one else, because no one signed up. So this is the last call for the open mic if you want to read after them.
I want to say one. I don't want to read an open mic or anything, but the discussion previously about journalism, short stories, memoirs, poetry, and I'll just speak about journalism because I think Theta and I share this. That we think of these as very different genres, I guess. But I don't know that they are that different. The shopping for the words, the choice of the words is common in them all. Mm-hmm. Even and Theta knows that I'm a big headline writer. Those choices and that cadence that you would think in a news story, the next time you read a well-written news story, you could notice in that poetry. I guess it's really what I want to say. And I think you would notice that in the stories that Theta has written. There might be a bigger case around it. There's more factors, a different thing that you're trying to achieve. But the selection of the words, the precision that goes into choosing those words, those headlines, those subheads, that lead, as we call it, the beginning of the news story. And it gets better. You know, if you had one more, if you just had 10 more minutes before deadline, you could probably pick a better word. So that all of that happens, whether you're a journalist or a short story writer or a novelist or a writer of nonfiction. I think it's there's a big common thread that goes through it all.
Yeah.
So appreciate it.
And that reminded me about 5-6 years ago, when you can Google it, find this. A journalist had a whole page given to her in the New York Times, and it was that she reads the poetry of each country before she goes on that journalism, before she has to go to that country to write an article. You can Google it and find it. I've saved it and I share it. And I actually share it with my poetry classes because it was a whole page in the New York Times, and she listed about 6 or 7 poems from different countries that she refers to before she goes to that country to write a journalistic article. So if you just Google like New York Times, I forget how you do it anyway, how you would find it, but it was fascinating.
Yes.
And,
That's awesome.
And in fact, one of the poems I remember before she goes to Greece was, the Heel of Achilles. I think it's by Auden. I can't remember the whole thing because I'm put on the spot here. But if I was giving my lecture, I'd have all that in front of me. But it was very interesting that because she was a journalist, that she went to poetry. That's the point.
Thank you. That
know the
sounds
people.
wonderful. I
Yeah.
definitely have to check that out.
And lawyers, I've heard it, well, I've met them too, it's not uncommon for someone to, decide, well, maybe practice isn't for them, but the language thing sticks. A lot of poets have, law backgrounds, have, crucial language backgrounds. It's interesting.
The poet I was trying to remember the name of who read in Jersey City recently is Noah R.M. Choi, Choi, and they have a new book, I think a newish book, Cut to Bloom.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Great, it's really great, so if you're looking for something new.
And a beautiful cover on that book,
Yeah,
too.
beautiful cover, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
wow.
very nice. So I'll go first? Okay, I'll read one. This is about my sister who suffered a traumatic brain injury which derailed her life when my daughter was only 2 months old. She's alive, but she can't work or walk or drive or what you were wearing. They handed me your clothes, the winter boots, the dark folded jeans in their impossible size 5. I put them in my trunk, then drove around for weeks, orbiting your hospital like a satellite sister. Every time I had to open the trunk, loading in the groceries, the rock salt, someone's suitcase, your clothes were waiting for me. I stood in parking lots, the hatchback of my car open like a mouth and my mouth open like a hatch. The brass buckle on your leather belt still burning like a sun.
Oh. What a lovely dismount. What an arrival. What gorgeous end.
Hard words to pull out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Forgive me. This is called Tumbled. And this, I wanted this one because this is a poem about language and playing with language and how often people who grow up to love language, I'm guessing that when you were a kid, you had like verbal games and things, like you'd hear a word and it would trip something, and it's like the word itself had a texture or something. And When I was a kid, I got into the Spooner, Reverend Spooner thing, like tiny little birds would be bunny little turds. Like you would just always mess up and swap around those initial sounds. And I did that when I was young, and it's distracting. And this is called Tumbled. What in hell are you doing at night on the creepiest street in South Patterson, fussing with some battery-busted wreck of a pink Barbie Jeep you found in the weeds and think you can get to run? Oh yeah, you live there. But still, underneath a street lamp, alone, the summer each phrase you hear gets tossed in your head till the sounds reverse. So candy bar morphs into bandy car, and starts at 4, emerges farts at store. And you, consumed, ignore the spank of steps and don't look up, though you feel the shadows' arcing fingers touch you. And sooner than you can summon, done, ranger, the real hands behind the darkness pluck you up, and round your neck a thick arm wraps itself. You hear, I have a knife, don't make no noise, but knife and noise both start with the same sound, though he kite mill me works. And this is a blade all right, its point where your shirt and shorts are parting ways. But he is new at this, fumbles to knead your front with his lifeless hand, and you drop your dead weight to the gravel, then fake him out, and escape with a few minor cuts and an earful of slobber. And he doesn't get what you know he really wants. So you run a victory lap through the crabapple trees, past pricker bushes, beer cans, some bum's wet mattress, screaming, shirtless, triumphant, a geyser whirl.
Wow.
I think of that poem a lot. It came into my head yesterday. I can't remember why. Just thinking of the Spoonerisms and all of that. So it's one of those ones that sticks with me. So, anyway, thank you both so much for a wonderful